not going to do a broad overview. I'm going to narrow this thing down to a great deal. Stagecoach Reservoir is currently listed as impaired by, I'm short. That's good. Okay, I'm sorry. Stagecoach Reservoir is currently listed as impaired by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, especially the Water Quality Control Division. There will be new standards in 2027 if they meet their goals that will further emphasize reduced water quality, especially for nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic matter in Stagecoach Reservoir. There are many issues related to water and the proposed Stagecoach Mountain Ranch. Water quality for snowmaking, landscaping, and human consumption is one. Another is recycled water use, very hot issue right now. Groundwater availability is an issue. Water quality and many others. I can't cover all of those in 20 minutes. I'm going to try to cover one in 20 minutes. My focus is going to be on water quality, and especially nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic matter. I'll try and make it clear why as I go. Objectives of this talk are to appeal for using science in land use decision making, because a lot of other things are used in decision making. Often science is kind of put under the rug. I want to identify the impact of drastic disturbances on water quality and in the Stagecoach Mountain ecosystem. And I want to explore the critical importance of something that scientists call lateral flow or base flow of water in transporting nitrogen and phosphorus and organic matter into the reservoir. The key sciences needed to evaluate what's going on above Stagecoach Reservoir are ecosystem science, climate science, hydrologic sciences, and soil science. They require holistic thinking and integration of knowledge among the sciences. Silo science is no longer a practical thing to use. To do this presentation, this is a critical concept for landscape ecology. We have a landscape ecosystem, which is kind of like Stagecoach Mountain. I've broken that down into hill slopes, of which there are many different hill slopes in the Stagecoach Mountain ecosystem. Within the hill slopes, there are many patches, and we'll talk about the patch scale a bit later. This is a picture of what I'm talking about. Stagecoach Reservoir in the foreground, Stagecoach Mountain in the background, and some of the communities of the existing Stagecoach community in at the base of the mountain. Here's an aerial view. We have Stagecoach Reservoir, which is owned and operated by the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District. We have Stagecoach State Park, which is leased from the Upper Yampa Water District. We have many communities, existing communities in the Stagecoach area. And we have the proposed 6,000 plus acre Stagecoach Mountain Ranch. Now, in order to proceed with this discussion, I want to talk about the road up into the flat tops. In the foreground, there's what I'm calling a patch, which is Stagecoach community. Behind that is an aspen community. Behind that are some other aspen communities, which we can call patches. And on up to the flat tops with other many patches. On the left-hand side, I'm going to use the symbolism of the patch. And the patch, I'm not going to go into great long. That was it. I want my 45 seconds back. The patch that I'm going to talk about is very simply shown here with vegetation at the surface, photosynthesizing vegetation. When you walk on the surface, you see that above ground vegetation. You don't see what is the vital, probably the most vital part of the patch scale ecosystem, which is below ground. In this diagram, a soil profile is that zone where basically where rooting takes place. And soils are layered into horizons. So as we go through this, we'll be talking about more of these ideas. The relationship of patches to hill slopes is shown here. Is this going to show? Yeah, that's big enough. The hill slopes are made up of patches. And the patch, each patch has its own definable, describable vegetation. And it also has its own definable soil profile. They can be similar or they may be very different. And as we have in this part of the country with the terrain that we have lots of different soils. In this diagram, on the right-hand side, the blue arrows indicate kind of the flow of water from one patch to the next at the surface. The left-hand side indicates water that flows downhill also, but below the surface. And that is one of the things, as I've reviewed what documentation there is now about Stagecoach Mountain Ranch, it's scarcely mentioned how much water goes below the soil surface downhill from patch to patch. It's a critical part of the concept. Here's a very simple diagram of a patch scale hydrologic cycle, water cycle, with the important flows, movement of water, where does it go, where does it come from. I'm going to talk specifically about surface water that can come to a patch from runoff and loss from runoff. And water at the surface can infiltrate into the soil, goes over. Some of it can be evaporated or transpired, but that's in action above ground. Below ground is where I'm headed for this discussion. And I'm going to talk mostly about lateral or base flow, lateral drainage. There are different terms depending on which silo of science you came from. But what I learned was lateral flow is that water that moves below the soil surface and above groundwater. Now, I'm not going to talk about this whole thing. This is the nitrogen, a very simple diagram of a nitrogen cycle. But I'm not going to talk about it. You want me to go back to that? What I will talk about is the below-ground ecosystem. And when I talk about that, it's the roots, microorganisms, soil animals, soil no minerals. This is a huge pool of nitrogen and phosphorus. In most ecosystems that we have, the largest pools of nitrogen and phosphorus are below ground, not above ground, what you see in water, whatever you do with the above ground vegetation. Need to talk about the critical importance of decomposition and mineralization. Decomposition breaks down complex dead organic matter like leaves, microorganisms, carcasses, roots, whatever is organic. The breakdown of those compounds into simpler organic compounds. Mineralization is the final stage that converts these remnants into molecules like CO2, which is lost to the atmosphere, and into inorganic nutrients like ammonium and phosphate. Not like that, but whole thing behind there. In natural ecosystems, nitrogen and phosphorus inputs roughly equal outputs on an annual basis or on a decadal basis, however long it is. The system is balanced in natural systems. It's due to internal recycling. There is no system that can have inputs from the atmosphere or even fixation of nitrogen that has enough nitrogen to operate the whole system. Nature has solved that problem by recycling. Internal recycling is what I think is one of the miracles of evolution. It's how self-maintaining ecosystems operate. But then let's talk about drastic disturbances. These are natural or human-caused events that significantly alter the natural structure and functioning of the ecosystems. Events that kill the vegetation, like excavation, plowing of natural vegetation, or excavation of or plowing natural vegetation, road, sidewalk, trail, ski run, parking lot construction and maintenance, building construction, utility construction are all events that are put in the category of, well, not just me, a lot of scientists, but goes into the drastic disturbance category. Drastic disturbances. When we kill the surface vegetation, we have things happen at the surface like the risk of increased erosion, for example, which can, and water runoff, which is, we're concerned about that. Stagecoach Mountain Ranch or Discovery is concerned about that. And this diagram shows the importance of runoff that can occur due to drastic disturbance. There's an issue of mitigation that is proposed in some cases to have retention ponds receive the runoff and trap the water and mitigate the processes that take care of it. What happens in a pond? It can evaporate, water can evaporate, it can infiltrate into the soil. Nothing else, there's nothing else that can happen to the water. When H2O water evaporates, nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic matter remain. They do not go into the atmosphere due to any kind of process. They remain afterwards. if the water infiltrates into the soil, it just joins the other water that's there from precipitation or from runoff and runoff from adjacent patches. Below ground, this is where the below ground ecosystem comes into existence and becomes very important. Water that evaporates off leaves behind the nitrogen and phosphorus ions that can run downhill below the surface of the soil. Decomposition and mineralization dominate the processes. They break down the internal recycling. There is a breakdown of the internal recycling which kept that natural system going in perpetuity. In disturbed ecosystems, the outputs can greatly exceed the inputs of nitrogen and phosphorus. With the dumpster right now. With the death of dominant vegetation, massive amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus can be moved downhill by lateral flow into the water bodies of wetlands below ground. That is a critical concept. Those flows will occur over years to decades. It's not like surface runoff that can occur within hours or a day or something like that with snowmelt. These flows can take years to decades to be realized. They cannot be mitigated that I know of. I don't know of any mitigation that's possible to deal with the lateral flow or base flow in these systems. Why are we concerned about it? There's a picture of those of you seeing the algae in Stagecoach Reservoir. We're worried about those additional inputs of nitrogen and phosphorus causing, along with climate change and warmer temperatures, we have the possibility of increased algal blooms, some of which can produce toxins. I want to talk a little bit about, very little bit about the laws or principles of nature and science. I have basic sciences being biology, chemistry, physics, and hydrology, which are all used to come up with these ideas that I'm talking about. Many of these laws cannot be controlled by human laws, policies, regulations, politics, or marketing aspirations. They cannot be mitigated. The integrated sciences, which I've called here ecology, ecosystems, climate, environmental well-being, public health and safety, are integrated sciences. And guess what? I'm claiming that these cannot be controlled by human laws, policies, regulations, politics, or marketing. They cannot be mitigated. Any of you, has anybody in here read Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth? A few. This is an inconvenient truth. Okay, before permitting and construction begins, I think credible scientific research must be engaged. Soil and hydrologic sampling, measurements, data synthesis, and modeling must be conducted. An extensive analysis of third-party soil scientists, hydrologists, ecosystem scientists, and ecosystem modelers must be completed. If the research indicates there's a high risk of movement of nutrients into the reservoir, I'm saying the permits must be denied. Conclusions, Stagecoach Reservoir is already impaired. Algal blooms already exist. Drastic disturbances cause massive release of biologically active nitrogen and phosphorus. Scientific studies must be completed prior to permitting. If post-construction monitoring finds increased inputs of nitrogen and phosphorus, the damage will have already been done. It cannot go back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So the whole strategy of monitoring during the course of construction, if the results show nutrients are going down, it's too late.
That's your question, sir?
If anybody wants to take a picture of that, take it. Okay, I'm done.